Well, U.S. congressional Democrats say the Trump administration's justifications for attacking Iran are falling short. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and other White House officials briefed Congress in a bid to get other lawmakers on board. Well, Rubio's arguments have done little, it seems at least, to convince senators that the war was actually necessary.
Let me explain to you guys this in simple English. Okay? Iran is run by lunatics, religious fanatic lunatics. They have an ambition to have nuclear weapons. They intend to develop those nuclear weapons behind a program of missiles and drones and terrorism that the world will not be able to touch them for fear of those things. And this is the weakest they've ever been. Now is the time to go after them. The president made the decision to go after them, take away their missiles, take away their navy, take away their drones, take away their ability to make those things so that they can never have a nuclear weapon. That's why the president made this decision. It was the right decision. And the world will be a safer place when these radical clerics no longer have access to these weapons.
Well, U.S. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy says the Trump administration is treating due process and the American public with contempt.
They told us in there that this is an open-ended operation that hasn't even really started in earnest yet. There will be more Americans killed. They refuse to take off the table the insertion of ground troops. This is going to make the operation in Libya look like child's play. There is no question this is war. They have contempt for the American people. They have contempt for the American people because they think that they can carry out the biggest war in the Middle East since Iraq and Afghanistan without a single vote, without a single discussion.
Rosiland, when this war began, the Gang of Eight, which I understand is a bipartisan group, was sort of briefed on this, but the wider Congress was not. There is legislation now to try to basically force the administration to get consent from Congress to continue with this war. Is that legislation likely to pass?
It's possible. It's not likely, given that Republicans control both the Senate and the House of Representatives by slim majorities. But certainly both of the resolutions, both the Senate and the House resolutions, would get pretty much all Democratic support. They would need Republican support in order to pass it, but if they wanted to survive a presidential veto, they would need to get 2/3 of both chambers to vote for the war power resolution. So that brings the probability down to probably zero at this point. Now, that does not mean that congressional Republicans, who by and large have been supportive of the president's decision to launch this air war on Iran, it doesn't mean that they wouldn't want to come back later and debate more substantial legislation, more that really deals with the duration, the funding, the scope of the U.S. military operation, if it seems that this is going to go on for more than 3 or 4 weeks. That is now becoming more apparent, including among some who otherwise would have been fully supportive of this conflict in the first place. But trying to just deal with the resolutions that are going to be coming up, the Senate's version on Wednesday, possibly the House version on Thursday, that probably won't be enough to stop the Trump administration from continuing this military operation.
So, Rosiland, the president has talked about the successes of, I guess, the first and second wave of attacks on Iran that he's calling them. He says the third wave, is going to be the biggest yet to come. Do we have any clues about what this may entail?
Well, one thing that Donald Trump has not done is actually tip his hand on what targets might be in the military's focus, what equipment the military might be using to take out those targets. But he did talk about the regional response while he was in the Oval Office on Tuesday. This is the U.S. President, Donald Trump.
We've had a very, very powerful impact because virtually everything they have has been knocked out now. Their missile count is going way down. Amazingly, they're hitting countries that were, let's call them neutral, right? They lived together for a long time. I think they were surprised. I was surprised. And now those countries are all fighting against them and fighting strongly against them.
Now, there's one other question. The president has suggested in the last 24 hours that there is an infinite supply of armaments or weapons that the U.S. military can use to conduct this war. Well, that's not the case. And if there's any indication that the supply is finite, well, there are now reports suggesting that the administration is preparing a $50 billion supplemental budget just to buy weapons for this military operation. That is something that, of course, would need congressional approval in order for the U.S., for the executive branch to be able to buy additional missiles, ammunition, what have you.
All right, we'll be watching closely. Rosalind Jordan for us there in D.C. Thank you.